My girlfriend, Sophia, is a wealthy heiress with traditional values. She has always been reluctant to let me touch even a single finger of hers. In order to gain the recognition of her father, I left my hometown and went overseas to engage in research. On the day of our departure, Sophia promised that she would marry me when I returned. So, when Sophia's family group was on the verge of bankruptcy, I unreservedly handed over all my research achievements to my future father-in-law to help him turn the situation around. However, when I happily returned to my homeland, ready to marry Sophia, I found her entangled with my look-alike. I initially planned to break up with her and go our separate ways. But later I learned that she had given herself to David during our relationship and even practiced the splits for him. So now, I've changed my mind. I must make her fall into the abyss. The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to like and subscribe. My friend sighed and said, "So, it only takes a year for a woman to change her heart." My friends were all indignant on my behalf. Today was my welcome back banquet. I had rushed back almost non-stop after a year abroad, but they told me that Sophia had a new boyfriend. The moment I saw that man, I felt a pang in my heart. Because the first time I saw him was in a photo. When I had just gone abroad, Sophia sent me a photo and said, "I thought it was you." I joked with her, "What, do you miss me?" She replied, "Yeah, I do." But then she called the wrong name, and the other person was completely confused. Looking back now, it's really funny. The figure in the photo really did look like me. One day later, Sophia suddenly said to me, "Let's just be friends." I asked, "Why?" She said, "I'm afraid you'll delay your studies. It's the same if we talk about our relationship when you come back." Just because of this sentence, I raced against time to finish my thesis and ended my overseas study life. But until tonight, I didn't know she had a boyfriend. His name was David, and he was Sophia's senior. As we were talking, Sophia came back from the bathroom, arm in arm with David. Sophia's lips were swollen, and she had newly applied lipstick, trying to cover something. Her eyes were watery. Everyone understood tacitly that it couldn't be just a simple trip to the bathroom after being gone for so long. David smiled casually and said, "Sorry, Sophia is soft-tempered. I have to accompany her more." This scene stabbed my eyes, and I quickly lowered my head. The people who had been indignant on my behalf just now immediately changed their expressions and said, "Spoiling one's wife, we understand. It's quite normal." Sophia's best friend smiled and said, "Sophia, you have to treat David well. Look how considerate he is. He accompanied you through the toughest times. Such a considerate, warm-hearted guy is hard to find. He's much better than the one who went far away." I silently took a sip of tea, and my mouth felt astringent. In their eyes, I had abandoned Sophia, but only Sophia knew why I left my hometown to study abroad. David noticed me and teasingly said to Sophia with a smile, "He looks quite like me. Am I his substitute?" Sophia pursed her lips and said, "What nonsense. He's so slovenly. How can he compare with you?" A hint of playfulness flashed in David's eyes, and he laughed even more heartily, as if he found her reaction extremely cute. He said, "Keep your voice down. You're really sharp-tongued." Everyone changed the topic and started talking about me. Someone asked, "I heard that you completed a 3-year course in 2 years and were recently hospitalized. What happened?" My smile was a bit forced, and I said, "I was eager to come back, so I didn't have time to eat. I got a stomach problem. It'll be fine after some rest." Everyone secretly observed Sophia's reaction. She lowered her eyes and was intently eating the crab meat that David had peeled for her, pretending not to hear. Speaking of which, I'd been with Sophia for more than 8 years. From the days when we were babbling in kindergarten, to the innocent and ignorant high school days, and then to college. We've accompanied each other for so long. Sophia, the wealthy heiress, changed from a little girl waiting for me to pack my school bag by the window to a woman waiting for me to get off work downstairs at my office. Everyone thought we would end up together, but now, Sophia was already wearing a new couple's ring, her fingers intertwined with another man's. David's curious eyes kept sizing me up. Just when everyone thought we would get along peacefully, he suddenly asked, "Dude, how did you two break up?" The surroundings suddenly fell silent. Sophia pouted and said, "I've told you about it before. Why are you still asking?" David laughed it off and said, "I just want to know you better from different perspectives." I averted my eyes and replied casually, "People change, you know. For example, taste. It's normal for her to like you now, isn't it?" He glanced at Sophia, and a trace of guilt flashed across his face. He said, "I didn't mean that. I just..." Sophia looked at me for the first time tonight, her eyes cold, and her tone carrying a faint warning. "James, don't be like this." In her opinion, even my normal answer was a provocation to David. This atmosphere made me a bit uncomfortable. I put down the napkin, stood up, and said, "Excuse me, I'm going to the bathroom." Leaving the private room, I almost felt drained of all my strength. No one had told me that she had someone she liked. Even just 2 months ago, when I sent Sophia a message saying, "I'm coming back," she was still saying, "Welcome back." The bathroom was filled with a strange and ambiguous smell. I leaned on the sink, turned on the faucet, and my mood was so depressed that I really wanted to vent my emotions. But I knew that they were a normal couple. After breaking up, I shouldn't pester them. Suddenly, the bathroom door was pushed open, and a voice came, "Sorry, Sophia left her lipstick here. She asked me to get it." It was David. He saw me in a mess, was stunned for a moment, and then stammered, trying to cover it up, "Well, we didn't do anything just now." The toilet paper in the trash can, the lipstick by the sink, and the 2 big and 2 small handprints on the mirror all reminded me of what had happened. But he just had to tear off that layer of paper and embarrass me. I took a deep breath and moved aside to let him get the things. David, however, stood in front of the mirror and started checking the sink. He sighed and said, "We were in a hurry just now. I'm a bit clumsy, you know. I don't know if I broke anything." After that, he looked up at the mirror and said with some annoyance, "Bro, do you have any tissues? I want to wipe off the marks. It would be so embarrassing if someone saw this." He was always in a remorseful posture, forcefully declaring his ownership. I didn't say a word and turned around and walked out. When David followed me into the room, he had a dejected look on his face, as if he had been greatly humiliated. Sophia nervously pulled David's arm and examined it carefully. She frowned and said, "David, what did James say to you? Did he bully you again?" Her best friend also stood up and said, "James, don't go too far. David and Sophia have been through so much together. Why should he quit just because you're back?" These words finally ignited my anger. I gritted my teeth and said, "Have you said enough?" She asked, "What do you mean?" I raised my eyes, suppressing my slightly trembling lips, and said, "Don't you want to know what we said in the bathroom? He just said that when he was having sex with you in the bathroom, he was too rough and left marks everywhere, so he needed to clean it up." Everyone involuntarily showed disgusted expressions. David's face turned pale, and he said, "Shut up." I was so angry that my whole body was shaking. I said, "Sophia, if your Sophia family didn't benefit at all from my academic achievements, you can scold me. But you have no right to do so." I tightly clenched my fists and raised my voice, "Excuse me, Miss Sophia, do you understand what I'm saying?" I flew into a rage, threw the chopsticks and smashed the bowls in front of everyone. Everyone was shocked. David stood there dumbfounded, and Sophia shrank into his arms in fear, looking pitiful. When I slammed the door and left, Sophia's best friend cursed, "Sophia, it's lucky you didn't end up with him. His temper has become so bad." I walked out with a cold face, not stopping. The rainy season had passed, and the cold air had swept through the city. I was standing by the roadside when I received a phone call. After answering it, there was a few seconds silence, and then a gentle and pleasant female voice came from the receiver, "Is everything going well?" My emotions suddenly burst. I sighed and said, "Prof. During my short study abroad life, if you asked me who left the deepest impression on me, it would be my supervisor, Olivia. She was only 30 years old and was already the youngest female professor at the MO Medical Center, with profound attainments in the field of biomedicine. Once, we had a fierce argument about my return to China. Olivia said in a very cold tone, "James, I've always admired you. It stands to reason I have no right to interfere in your private life. But you clearly have a bright future ahead of you, yet you want to end your studies early. In my opinion, this is a very unwise choice. Your research shouldn't stop here." I still returned to China, full of courage, only to hit a wall and end up in a desperate situation. I was prepared to accept ridicule, but Olivia said, "I'm about to take off. Let's talk when I land." I asked, "Where are you going?" She chuckled and said, "There's an academic conference in your city tomorrow." She slowly said, "James, everyone makes mistakes. You can choose to keep going wrong or get back on the right track. I hope to see you there tomorrow." I looked at the night sky, imagining her appearance when she said these words, gentle, elegant, intelligent, and refined. I rubbed my throbbing temples and said hoarsely, "I understand, Professor." I rented an apartment in the city center, in the same community as Sophia. I originally wanted to be closer to her, but now it has become the most annoying place. When Sophia's best friend called me, I was just pulling the curtains. Coincidentally, looking out of my window towards the opposite side, I could see the living room of Sophia's house. At this time, there were 2 people standing by the window. Sophia was like a willow, softly clinging to David. The window screen fluttered, and the 2 were necking. On the phone, Sophia's best friend was still chattering non-stop. James, since you've broken up, don't pester her. It's really annoying. Move away quickly and don't disturb them. David is much better than you. He cares more about people, is more responsible, and more stable. Think about where you're lacking. Actually, I wasn't interested in arguing with her, unless she insisted on being mean. I interrupted her and said, "Don't you like David?" She asked, "What?" I said, "Don't you like your best friend's boyfriend? I can see them kissing. Do you want to see?" Sophia's best friend was suddenly stunned, and then, as if her shame had been exposed, she cursed, "James, are you crazy?" She angrily hung up the phone. When I called back to say a few more words, I found that I had been blocked. It was really ridiculous. On the day of the conference, I met Sophia and David. Sophia came to this conference because it was related to the fate of the Sophia family group. Naturally, Sophia's father sent Sophia to attend. Moreover, the research results of Professor Olivia and I would directly determine the development direction of the industry in the next few years. David put his arm around Sophia's shoulder, looked around, and then said to me, "Dude, who did you come in with?" From his expression, I could tell that he thought I was a fake returnee who didn't even have the qualification to enter the venue without someone's help. I ignored his words. Unexpectedly, he continued to provoke me, "If you have a new girlfriend, show her to us." Suddenly, Olivia's voice rang out. The next second, she came to my side and said softly, "Hello, I'm James' supervisor. May I ask who you are?" I turned my head and saw her delicate profile, as cold and distant as ever. She never usually asks about other people's private affairs, let alone greet them. Worried that she might be offended by Sophia, I quickly replied, "These are my ex-girlfriend and her current boyfriend." After hearing this, the corners of Olivia's eyes, which had been slightly filled with spring water, turned into fine ice. She said softly, "James, it's about to start. As we did before, we need you to take the lead." I had attended countless such occasions, so I was naturally familiar with the process. Sophia was puzzled and said, "Wait, what are you going up for?" It was really ridiculous. The Sophia family group had clearly established itself in the industry through my research results, but Sophia didn't even remember what achievements I had made, nor did she remember that my supervisor was a well-known overseas scholar invited to this conference. I ignored her and turned to leave. David, who had been silent just now, followed me and called me from the audience, saying calmly, "Dude, what do you want to prove by doing this? That you're stronger than me? Don't think too highly of yourself." The lights in the venue drew a clear line between us. I looked at his face, which was slightly twitching due to his forced smile, and said word by word, "Little guy, have you lost your mind?" As I finished speaking, all the lights in the venue went out, and a dazzling beam of light fell from above my head. I stood in the light and didn't see David's expression. As Olivia said, people always take some detours. Maybe it's being bewitched or being blinded by greed, but never give the initiative to others, whether in career or in love. I had a humble background. In order to prove my ability to Sophia's father and let him agree to our marriage, I went abroad to study and gave him my first batch of academic achievements. It was also because of this that the Sophia family group became a well-known enterprise, while I became the laughingstock of others. Now, I won't make the same mistake again. That night, I became a sought-after person among many companies. Graduating from an Ivy League school, a returned medical doctor, and a student of Professor Olivia, these halos combined made me spend the whole night in greetings and small talk. During the tea break, I came out of the bathroom, and Sophia was waiting outside early. She said, "James, long time no see." For a moment, I seemed to be back in the past. She was just as I had expected, standing at the airport exit, smiling and saying to me, "James, long time no see." When the beautiful expectation was shattered by reality, only the fragmented and even disgusting reality was left. I said expressionlessly, "Miss Sophia, isn't this a bit too late?" A trace of grievance flashed across Sophia's face. She bit her lip and said, "Last year, the Sophia family group encountered a crisis. The company could go bankrupt at any time. My father mortgaged the house and the car. At that time, I was very scared and in pain. James, I did not look for you. I wanted to talk to you, but you were very busy with your so-called experiments." I listened to her sudden complaint and sneered, "You blame me?" I said with a straight face, "You were the one who proposed to break up, and you were the one who said we could talk when I came back. Sophia, why bother? Is it so difficult to admit that you couldn't wait?" She lowered her eyes and didn't dare to look at me. She said softly, "Can we get back together?" I directly slapped her across the face. Sophia's head was slapped to the side, and a 5-finger mark appeared on her fair side face. I was so angry that I laughed. I asked, "Sophia, are you cheap? Will you die if no one loves you? When there's a difficulty, you throw yourself into a man's arms. When your father can't be relied on, you come to me. When I'm not around, you find someone else. Do you need to be married off in a ghost marriage after you die? Sophia hung her head. But David rushed over from somewhere and pushed me. He cursed, James, how can you hit her? When she tried to commit suicide by taking sleeping pills, where were you? Stop talking. Sophia interrupted him. Sophia, don't hide it from him. David shook off Sophia's hand forcefully. He said sternly, I was really heartbroken when I saw her helpless look. I felt it was unfair for her. Do you know? How could there be such an irresponsible boyfriend like you? During that time, I stayed with her every day, took care of her, made her happy, and took her out to relax. What about you, James? You were abroad, getting a degree, and when you came back, a lot of people were flattering you. Do you think you're the chosen one, so everyone has to obey you? I sneered, did I cause her depression? Did she tell me about it? And you're really ridiculous. What did your so-called companionship solve? What are you? She can stand here today all because my academic achievements helped the Sophia family company solve the crisis, and the Sophia family didn't go bankrupt. Now that the Sophia family is prosperous, what have I got? David gritted his teeth and said, what have you got? Don't you know what you're like tonight? I replied, I know exactly what I'm like tonight, and this is what I deserve. If she survived, she should thank the doctor. What are you being thanked for? The doctor worked around the clock to save her. Why doesn't she marry the doctor? David's face turned bright red, as if he had suffered a great humiliation. He shouted loudly, she has depression. Do you know that? I was speechless and said, what the hell are you talking about? How many times are you going to say it? Are you a broken record? I showed my impatience and said, if she's sick, get her treated. Don't come bothering me. David was furious and was about to fight me. In that instant, Sophia grabbed his arm and said, stop it. I know who treats me well. These words stabbed into my heart like a needle. The MO Medical Center is at a high latitude. It snows all year round, and the night temperature is below zero. I traveled between the laboratory and the dormitory in the cold, braving the elements day and night. I gave the research results of 2 years of hard work to the Sophia family for Sophia's sake. She said she knew who was good to her, and I was so angry that I gritted my teeth and said, Sophia, have you lost your conscience? Sophia pretended not to hear and gently said, holding David's arm, David, let's go home. When I pushed open the glass door of the rooftop, the noise was a bit loud, causing several people to turn their heads in surprise. Olivia was already sitting there. She tilted her head and said, this is the first time I've seen you lose your temper. I pinched the center of my brows irritably, trying to suppress my gloomy expression, and said, I ran into some trouble, but it's nothing serious. Olivia blinked and looked me up and down. She said, it's okay. You don't have to suppress yourself. I turned my head to look at the night view of the city. The lights were scattered like stars, and the streets were bustling with traffic. A gentle breeze blew across the collar of my shirt at the back of my neck, and the surrounding noise gradually faded away. That two-faced bitch, she's so damn shameless. I suddenly burst out with a swear word. Olivia pursed her lips and smiled, then casually handed me a glass of wine. I clenched my fists, which were shaking with anger, and took the glass and drank it in one gulp. Olivia asked softly, do you remember the first time you came to my laboratory? I scratched my head and recalled, yeah, I made a mess of things and even made the senior sister cry. Olivia rested her chin on one hand and said, I know you didn't come to study abroad voluntarily. According to the rules, I should have asked you to leave. But later, you got along so well around me that I couldn't refuse your application. Everyone has their own path to follow, and you can't stop someone from getting off halfway, right? James, you don't belong here. I sat in the wicker chair, staring blankly at Olivia, and said, Professor, I thought you'd say I should think it through. She usually doesn't interfere in other people's private affairs, and this was probably the most overstepping thing she'd ever said. Olivia's almond-shaped eyes stared intently at me. She looked at me seriously for a while, as if thinking about something. Suddenly, the wind picked up. She opened her mouth gently and then lowered her eyes, saying, Sorry, I have my own selfish motives. These words were carried away by the wind, like a tail gently brushing across the tip of my heart, making me tremble slightly. The academic conference ended before 10 o'clock. I walked out of the conference hall with my briefcase and found a group of people gathered in front of the door. There was a faint smell of cigarette ash in the air. I walked down the steps and saw a brazier placed in front of my car. The flames had just gone out, and several photos were lying inside, burned to half a face. They were my photos. The onlookers were talking among themselves. Who did this? It's so unlucky. This is like cursing someone to death. There were a few big characters written in red paint on the car glass. The adulterer deserves to die. The perpetrator, afraid that people wouldn't see, specifically chose bright red and wrote it several times on the windshield and the car body. When the people around realized I was the owner of the car, they started pointing at me. Someone said, "He looks like a decent person, but he's stealing someone else's girlfriend." No wonder. In fact, there are quite a few such people. They seem serious, but in reality, they're hypocrites. For such people, their achievements may not even be their own. Blood rushed to my head instantly. Even with my good upbringing, I couldn't tolerate being slandered again and again. Through the crowd, I caught David's calm gaze. I couldn't help but wonder where he got the courage and confidence. I pushed through the crowd and rushed straight towards him. David didn't expect me to attack directly and stood there stunned. The next second, I grabbed his collar, pulled him over, and pressed his face hard against the car glass. I said coldly, "Lick it clean for me." He was so scared that he was speechless for a moment. Then he struggled desperately and shouted, "Let me go." "What are you doing?" I gritted my teeth and said, "I'll teach you a lesson." My fingers were white at the joints. While holding him down, I used my free hand to call the police. The commotion at the scene attracted many onlookers. But before I could make the call, Sophia's scream came from behind the crowd, "James, let him go." The anxious look on her face was something I had never seen before. As soon as she came closer, I kicked over the brazier, and the dust covered her. I shouted harshly, "Where did you get my photos?" Sophia didn't answer directly. Instead, she said with a neither humble nor arrogant look, "Hitting people is against the law. Do you believe I'll call the police right away?" I was extremely speechless. David stuttered and shouted, "Don't call the police." "Whose side are you on, Sophia?" I sneered and said, "Are you planning to turn in your own lover and send David to jail?" Sophia was taken aback, frowned, and said, "James, be reasonable. Why are you acting like a madman?" I asked, "Do you want to see something even crazier?" I took out a voice recorder and pressed the play button. A recording of me and Sophia played. I said, "Sophia, is it so hard to admit that you couldn't wait?" She replied, "Can we get back together?" I asked, "Sophia, are you cheap?" Sophia's pupils suddenly dilated. She looked nervously at David, who was stunned, and said, "David, it's not like that. That's not what I meant." David's face turned pale, and he gritted his teeth and said, "You still like James, don't you? What do you take me for? A substitute?" I held the voice recorder and held it between the two of them, playing it on a loop. "Can we get back together? Sophia, are you cheap?" Finally, David broke down. He roared, snatched the voice recorder, and smashed it to pieces. Then he pushed Sophia down and turned around to leave. Sophia stood up, hurt, and sobbed, "James, you're so heartless." After that, she cried and chased after him, leaving a mess and the onlookers as quiet as chickens. I glanced around, then silently got into the car. After a while, I covered my eyes and let out a deep sigh. The surveillance camera at the door recorded the whole process of David damaging my car. He not only smeared my car with paint but also smashed several holes in the hood with a hammer. If I insisted on not reaching a settlement, David might be detained for a few days, just a few days. They offered several times more compensation. I sat in the mediation room. Opposite me were Sophia and David, who was glaring at me. David resentfully signed the settlement agreement and handed it to me. The police officer said, "Mr. David, the victim requires you to apologize." David looked at Sophia, gritted his teeth, and said, "I will never apologize. Sophia, maybe in your heart, I'm not as good as your childhood sweetheart. I can't stop you two from having an affair, but I also have my self-respect as a man. I will never bow to him." I was speechless and said expressionlessly, "Are you out of your mind?" I and she have long since ended. Sophia pursed her lips, looked at me again, and said, "James, the money has been given to you. Why are you being so petty? Why can't this matter just end like this?" I laughed and said, "Whether it ends or not, since when does the perpetrator get to decide?" I pushed the mediation paper back and said magnanimously, "Okay, it ends like this. Double the compensation, and I'll let it go." Sophia's face turned red. She bit her lip, about to say something. I interrupted, "What were you going to say? If you can't speak properly, you have to use money to make up for it." David slapped the table and stood up, saying, "Isn't it just about money? Fine, we can do that. The Sophia family has plenty of money." Sophia looked helpless. In the end, they readily gave the money. Miss Sophia wasn't short of money. After all, the Sophia family had made a fortune from my achievements. But I didn't care anymore. Having money was enough. When we came out of the police station, David held Sophia in his arms and said with a look of guilt, "Sorry, I was impulsive." Sophia tugged at his sleeve and said, "It's not your fault, David. It's all because I misjudged people before. I didn't expect he would be such a vicious person." It was raining outside. I stood under the eaves, staring at the bead like rain curtain for a long time without speaking. Really, it was so meaningless. A relationship of more than 10 years was completely worn away in just a few days. I frowned. My phone received a text message. When I opened it, I froze in place. The text message said, "I knew there was something going on between David and Sophia. A friend of mine found David's Weibo. This is a photo he posted last May Day. You and Sophia hadn't broken up then, right?" In the photo, David was wearing a half-body bath towel, looking very proud. He was taking a selfie with his right hand holding the phone in front of the hotel mirror, and his left hand was around the slender waist of a woman wearing a mask. The caption was, "Met up with my junior sister. Ready for a night of passion." Someone commented enthusiastically below, "Nice, bro. I've been watching you too. Go for it, man. Your girl has a great figure." David replied, "Of course. Your sister-in-law can even do the splits." I held my phone. The moisture seemed to seep into my bones, and my hands and feet turned cold. At that time, I had been abroad for less than a year and hadn't even achieved anything yet, but Sophia had already hooked up with David. Later, the Sophia family group took away my achievements and became a top-tier company in the industry. How dare she? Sophia called me from behind. She said coldly, "For the sake of our long-standing acquaintance, you can consider cooperating with the Sophia family group." I took a step back, getting farther away from Sophia. A strong feeling of nausea welled up in my stomach. It took me a great deal of effort to calm my tone and said calmly, "What if your boyfriend comes to cause trouble for me again?" David was about to get angry, but she tugged at David and said, "No, he won't." Sophia said distantly, "We'll only talk about cooperation in the future. He won't bother you." It was really funny that she still had the nerve to talk to me about cooperation. Before today, I just wanted to write off everything with her, but now, I changed my mind. I was going to make her fall into the abyss. The rain was still falling. The pattering of the rain made people feel a bit dazed. "James." Sophia called me. I shook my head, smiled slightly, and asked, "How much do you think you can be trusted by me?" Sophia's lips tightened into a line, and she didn't speak for a long time. I took out a silver ring wrapped in a sealed bag from my pocket and threw it into the rainwater at her feet, saying, "This is of no use to me anymore." When she pestered me to buy this pair of silver rings, we were still middle school students. The rings were ordinary, far from being comparable to the one on her ring finger now. We had been wearing them for many years. I had planned to buy her a diamond ring and propose to her after returning to China, but unexpectedly, things changed. Plans can never keep up with changes. Sophia stared fixedly at our couple's ring. Her lips turned a bit pale. Ridiculous, isn't it? She seemed to suddenly remember something, and a look of guilt appeared on her face. She bit her lip and said, "James." I replied, "Don't call me like that." I took a step back and stood in the rain. The rain instantly drenched me. Sophia took a step forward but was finally stopped by David pulling her back. I twitched the corners of my mouth and said, "Sophia, stay away from me in the future." When Olivia and I got in the car and left, David and Sophia seemed to be arguing. David pushed Sophia down into the rain and shouted angrily, "Aren't you going to cooperate with your white moonlight? Get out of here and don't bother me anymore. You're a rich heiress, and he's a returned doctor. What am I? I'm a poor guy. I don't deserve you at all. I can only wish you two were locked together forever." The next second, Sophia knelt down in the rain, crying bitterly, and hugged his legs, pleading. The umbrella fell to the ground. In the heavy rain, the two people at the police station entrance looked like two drowned rats. Olivia said to me, "You're still looking even though we're so far away. Aren't you afraid of getting carsick?" I expressionlessly withdrew my gaze and said, "I actually feel a bit nauseous." She snorted and said, "Driver, please drive faster." It was the evening rush hour, and the traffic congestion extended the time we were traveling together. Olivia suddenly said, "I'm going back tomorrow. Thank you for the gift. I like it very much." These words stunned me, and I didn't come back to my senses for a long time. In fact, these days after returning to China, I wasn't quite used to it. I often dreamed of being in the laboratory. That place felt more like home. I felt a sense of loss in my heart and said, "Say hello to them for me." Olivia blinked but didn't say anything. After a while, she called me, James. What? At that moment, our eyes met, and we could see something we both insisted on in each other's eyes. Olivia opened her mouth but didn't say anything. Instead, she smiled and said, "Wish you all the best." I replied, "Thank you. The same to you." The rain outside became heavier, washing those unspeakable and hidden feelings into the rain curtain. Later, nothing could be seen. After Olivia left, I joined Zhanghe, a competitor of the Sophia family. For years, Zhanghe had been suppressed and couldn't lift its head because of the technology held by the Sophia family. On the first day of my employment, I met an acquaintance. "Why are you here?" As soon as I entered the office, I saw a familiar face. Chloe came up to me. Her fingertips brushed over the folds of her black knitted dress, and the loose hair in a low bun exuded the fragrance of snow pine. She said, "Long time no see, senior." She was kind of my junior sister. She had excellent grades and a wealthy family. As the only daughter in the family, she inherited her father's company after graduation. This relationship made our communication very harmonious. Chloe poured me a cup of tea and said seriously, "Senior, you can actually consider technical shareholding. I will definitely give you the highest return here." She was very sincere and offered generous benefits. "Chloe," I said, looking at her seriously, "I don't doubt your sincerity, but shareholding is not necessary." She asked, "Why?" Chloe frowned slightly and said, "Are you still thinking about Lou?" I smiled and interrupted, "Who doesn't want to make money? It's just not the right time." "Chloe, do me a favor." Recently, David's account has been updated very frequently. He posted, "Visited my future father-in-law today." I asked what to prepare, and Sophia said she would help me. Having a wife like this, what more could a man ask for? Ha ha. The next post was, "My future father-in-law is very satisfied. I don't have to work hard anymore." Many people in the comment section booing, "Are you about to achieve financial freedom?" Some also commented, laughing to death, "He's just a gigolo. Is that something to be proud of?" Another person replied, "The one above is still too young. Haven't graduated from college yet, right? Reading thousands of books is not as good as traveling thousands of miles. Traveling thousands of miles is not as good as having a rich woman to help." Someone else commented, "What's wrong with being a gigolo? I suggest Mr. E write a guide on how to be a successful gigolo." In this kind of flattery, David showed off his life day after day. Perhaps having heard that I didn't get a very good treatment after joining Zhanghe, and among colleagues, it's easy to find out that I often work overtime late at night with just a little inquiry. David started sending me messages, "Bro, don't work too hard. Go out and walk around more. Otherwise, if you find a girlfriend and get tired out in the future, you'll earn money but not be able to enjoy it. Then someone else will spend your money, sleep with your wife, and beat your kids. How tragic. Ah, I feel so guilty. I can drive a luxury car and live in a villa without working. It's so comfortable. Actually, I really should thank you." I didn't respond to any of this. This situation lasted for over half a year. My career was going nowhere, while David amassed quite a few fans by sharing his ways to leech off a woman tricks. Now, whenever our friends talk about it, they all praise David, saying he's somewhat capable. I gradually faded from everyone's sight. On an ordinary Friday night, David's message arrived right on time. He said, "Dude, Sophia's pregnant, and it's mine. Thanks to your efforts, the Sophia family made money. Now I'm about to marry a rich beauty and reach the peak of my life. Happy? Jealous?" Along with that, he sent an emoji with bared teeth. I'd explained to him many times that I had nothing to do with Sophia, but he didn't believe me. To be honest, David's mental state had been developing in a really strange direction in the past 6 months. Initially, he wasn't part of my plan, and I'd even solemnly warned him not to harass me anymore. Unfortunately, you can't save someone who's determined to ruin themselves. In just a few minutes, he started bombarding me with messages, "Can't you understand me? I'm going to be a dad. What are you still pestering Sophia for? Sophia is my wife. If I find out you're meeting her at night again, I won't mind live streaming a beating for you." When he was saying all this, I was sitting right across from Sophia. I asked, "Are you pregnant?" Sophia took a sip of red wine, frowned, and stared at me, replying, "Yeah." I smiled and said, "You should drink less. It's not good for your health." She nodded, then continued reading the document, pressing her lips together without saying a word. I waved my hand, asking the waiter to change her drink to juice. As I wiped my hands, I asked, "After our meetings recently, if you don't go home, where do you go?" Sophia didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked me, "Is this all Chloe said?" This business plan doesn't seem to be complete. That's right. I'd been in private contact with Sophia for 2 months. Since Zhanghe Company was developing rapidly and there would be a bidding next month, it had become the most formidable competitor of the Sophia family group. When Sophia's father was at his wits' end, I extended an olive branch to him, saying, "Uncle, Zhanghe can't offer me much. And you know my feelings for Sophia. Because of this connection, I'm more inclined to cooperate with you." So, he got the message and asked Sophia to negotiate with me. I'd known Sophia for over 10 years, and I was skilled at playing the emotional card. Our relationship warmed up quickly. Every week, we'd meet at a secluded members-only Western restaurant. I'd give her some information to help the Sophia family deal with Chloe, but that was all. I wouldn't stoop to meddling in other people's relationships, let alone keep her out all night. Sophia had complained to me more than once. She pouted and said, "If I'd known it would be like this, you should have just cooperated with the Sophia family in the first place. Why make it so complicated?" I pinched my aching forehead and said, "If I gave you the entire business plan, Zhanghe would send me to jail." As I spoke, I casually tidied my handbag and said, "I'm going to the restroom. You read it quickly." Just as I finished speaking, the door was suddenly pushed open, and David rushed in with several burly men. He gritted his teeth and said, "This is the guy." He held his phone, looking furious, as if he wanted to tear me to pieces. It had been a long time since I last saw David. He'd lost a lot of weight. He was far from the dashing and confident look he had on camera. His eye sockets were sunken, and his cheeks were visibly hollow. He looked haggard. Before I could say anything, I was surrounded by those burly men. They all cursed, "Shameless. How dare you touch my boss's woman? You're tired of living." Fortunately, the security in this place I chose was really good. After a brief commotion, they were subdued by the security guards. I got a bit scratched during the scuffle. David shouted angrily, "Everyone, look! Is there no law left? My wife is pregnant, and they're having an affair here." I wiped the wound on my hand and looked at Sophia. She had been huddled on the sofa the whole time. Like most women caught cheating, she remained silent, as if this was just a battle between men and the fire would never reach her. I rolled up my sleeves, walked over, and slapped Sophia hard across the face. With a slap, the scene fell silent instantly. Sophia was stunned. She covered her face and looked up at me in disbelief. I frowned and said, "What are you looking at?" I said coldly, then continued, "If you want this cooperation to continue, don't let this guy stage this cheating, catching farce again. Otherwise, we'll all be in trouble." David was still cursing. He said through gritted teeth, "Have the guts to let me go and fight one-on-one. I'll beat you to death, you son of a bitch." It's quite ridiculous. When I was young, I couldn't see Sophia clearly. I just thought she was a goddess above me, and I was willing to be her lackey. Unexpectedly, in just a few months, I saw through her. She was selfish and only cared about herself. Seeing that she still didn't react, I smiled calmly and said, "Sophia, don't forget, this involves commercial crime. If we're caught, we'll go to jail." David was impulsive and hot-tempered. He didn't care about this. He just believed that as long as I was in the same room as Sophia, our old feelings had reignited. So, like a wild beast, after breaking free, he picked up a stick and smashed the TV in the private room. But Sophia, who had once almost fallen into the abyss, cared. Her glamorous life couldn't end like this. In the next few minutes, I became a bystander. Sophia slowly walked over. The next second, she slapped David, who was going crazy, hard across the face. David's eyes widened in disbelief. His anger instantly vanished, leaving only disappointment and confusion. He said in a hoarse voice, "Sophia, what are you doing?" A trace of regret flashed in Sophia's eyes. She bit her lip and said, "Sorry, David, I just..." David's face turned pale. He gave her a deep look, then left with his buddies without looking back. Sophia had her back to me, and her figure looked desolate. After a long time, she said, "James, I'm pregnant with his child. This is the last time. After this, we won't contact each other anymore." I picked up my briefcase, filled with sarcasm. Pregnant with his child? That was laughable. She probably didn't even know who the father of the child in her belly was. Every time we finished our meeting early, she would go to some places with good security measures with her girlfriends and wouldn't come back until midnight. After David noticed, she wanted to shift the blame to me. She was dreaming. I picked up my coat, passed by Sophia, and whispered a warning, "Sophia, do some good deeds. Do some good, or even hell won't accept you after you die." Half a month later, the bidding started, but Sophia got involved in a scandal. As an influential blogger, David, after disappearing for half a month, directly exposed Sophia on the internet, revealing our so-called affair. All of a sudden, there was a flood of curses on the internet, and I wasn't spared either. Chloe said on the phone, "Senior, have you thought that this could ruin your reputation?" I looked at the photo Olivia sent. She was standing under the snow-covered mountains, looking at the sunrise. Her almond-shaped eyes were peaceful and gentle. I suddenly missed her a bit. The paper calendar on the table flipped to the next page. I ticked it with a pen and said, "No, I just hope that when Zhang He becomes the industry leader, they can fulfill the promise they made to me." Chloe replied, "Of course they will." During this period, although there were constant rumors about me and Sophia, Chloe always chose to believe me. She said, "Maybe you can consider staying here." I said, "If there's a chance in the future, I will." In just a few days, the public opinion fermented rapidly. Even at work, people pointed at me. I often stared at the 19th floor of the opposite office building, where Sophia was. One day, she finally saw me, waved at me, and soon called me. She said, "David has been controlled by my dad. It's time to post a clarification announcement. As long as you post an alibi to prove that we weren't together, I'll be cleared." I laughed. Why didn't she post it herself? Because she wasn't innocent at all. It was just that the person she cheated with wasn't me. I sat at my workstation, lazily crossing my legs. The sun shone on me, making me feel warm. I replied, "Sophia, I don't want to post it." Her voice tightened as she asked, "Why?" I replied, "Because I love you, right?" My tone was full of sarcasm. James is so stupid. Even after being betrayed once, he's still willing to work like a slave for Sophia. These were the exact words she said to her best friend on the phone last week, which I overheard by accident. Sophia wasn't as smart as she seemed. She actually believed that all men were lackeys controlled by their lower instincts. That kind of thinking was really stupid. Sophia was stunned for a moment, then got angry. She replied, "James, what exactly do you want? As long as you're willing to help me, I can marry you." Her answer made me laugh. I said, "What are you thinking? Have you forgotten that you're pregnant with a child whose father you don't even know?" She started to get anxious and said, "James, don't say that about me, okay? You know I'm innocent." I responded, "No, I don't." I stood up, gently knocking on the window glass, and said, "Sophia, deal with your own affairs." After hanging up the phone, I saw her seemingly pressing against the floor-to-ceiling window, glaring at me hatefully. I knew she was about to explode. When a person wants to lose their temper but has nowhere to vent it, they're not far from going crazy. This incident caused huge losses to the Sophia family and made Sophia lose all her face. I refused to testify, and Chloe reported her to the police, accusing Sophia of colluding with me to steal business secrets. In front of the police, Sophia honestly confessed where she went with her girlfriends at night, such as the clubs of corrupt officials and the private mansions of the children of officials. I was in the next room, listening to another farce. This time, David completely broke down. He threw the medical examination report on Sophia's face and cursed, "Sophia, you're really something. You're so shameless. You don't even know who the father of the child is, right? What a rich heiress. I think you're just a..." It turned out that she had affairs with not just one person but 7 or 8 people on the same day. The upper-class circle was really incredibly chaotic. I tried to empty my mind, my eyes unfocused, holding back the urge to laugh. The police officer patted the table and said sternly, "What are you doing? Pay attention." I said, "I didn't do it." The police officer said, "If you didn't, why does she have the information of your company?" I replied, "I don't know." In fact, they quickly found the video of my meeting with Sophia that day. While I was getting up to go to the restroom, Sophia opened my briefcase, turned on my laptop, and inserted a USB drive. She obtained the business secrets through illegal means. It had nothing to do with me. I was acquitted. Unfortunately, it was raining again. It seemed to rain every time I came to this kind of place. I prefer snow. Chloe was waiting for me at the door. She had a gossipy look on her face and said with a laugh, 7 or 8? "Senior, I really didn't know Sophia was this messy in private. It's so ridiculous. People might think she's making adult movies." Halfway through her laughter, she stopped and said, "Senior, I want to ask, have you had a medical check-up?" I smiled and said, "Don't worry about me. Think about how to make money instead." When I first entered medical school, the teacher told us to check the infectious disease report before having a relationship. So, over the years, I hadn't been in a hurry to have a more intimate relationship with her, and thus, I avoided trouble. David got seriously ill and was completely worn out. He was sitting stupidly on a public bench, looking lost. I didn't want to pay attention to him. But when I passed by him, he called me and asked, "How come you're okay?" I lowered my head, sighed, and put the business card of my classmate from the infectious disease department into his hand, saying, "Be strong. When Sophia gets out in the future." I choked up a bit. "You'll still have to support her." After that, I covered my face and quickly turned to walk towards Chloe, who was laughing like crazy. Behind me came David's crazy roar. I almost got hit by him. My agreement with Chloe was that I would invest in the company with my technology to help her make it the industry leader, and she would help me stage a play to bring down the Sophia family group. But I didn't expect that Chloe showed the utmost sincerity. She gave me real information, which led to Sophia actually causing a loss of 20 million to Zhanghe. Her initial goal was to send Sophia to prison. With commercial crimes and long-term chaotic power sex transactions, Sophia was sentenced. As the saying goes, when a person is down, everyone kicks them. The fact that she cheated on me with David after I went abroad was spread on the internet by someone with a grudge. Netizens they cursed one after another. David is the real scumbag. Scumbag and slut. They deserve to get sick. Fortunately, James is smart. An ordinary person would have to suffer in silence. It had been a year since I returned to China and learned the truth until everything was settled. I booked a flight ticket and was ready to leave. Before leaving, I went to visit Sophia. She was a woman who had lost everything and was suffering from an incurable disease. She was really pitiful. She was no longer as bright and charming as she used to be. She looked frail. She asked in a hoarse voice, "Are you satisfied, James? I didn't expect you to be so heartless. I just didn't keep my promise to wait for you, and you had to harm me like this." She must have thought that cheating and playing with a lackey's feelings wasn't a crime worthy of such punishment. I laughed out loud and said, "Sophia, I also need to make money." "What?" She stared intently at my face and asked, "What do you mean?" I held the phone receiver, getting closer to her, close enough for her to see every detail of my face. Then I raised my eyes and showed a mocking smile. I said, "I want to clear the market. If the Sophia family doesn't fall, how can I become the dominant one? How can I make money? Did you really think I'd be trapped by love and never recover?" Sophia's pupils reflected my big smile. I said, "Love is just for fun. Sophia, you're not worthy to be my partner. So, I'm sorry, but I have to get rid of you." This was probably the most terrifying thing Sophia had ever heard in her life. Her pupils dilated, and she slowly leaned against the glass. After a brief silence, she suddenly started pounding violently and shouting like a madwoman, as if she wanted to tear me apart. I gently hung up the receiver and stood up gracefully. From that day on, I became one of the shareholders with the highest shareholding in Zhanghe. In the next few years, I will go to the United States in person to build a bridge for technical communication between China and abroad. Ahead of me is a blue ocean, and those mediocre people are destined to be left on the shore, heading towards the end of their fate. On the day of departure, at the airport, Chloe grabbed my suitcase and said, "Senior, actually, I like you quite a bit." She was very straightforward. She had been rejected by me countless times but still persevered. I smiled and asked, "Love or making money, which one do you choose?" She snorted and said, "Of course, making money." She answered without hesitation. After that, we both laughed. I pulled my luggage and said, okay. Thank you for your liking. I really have to catch my flight." Chloe stared at me seriously for a while, then suddenly stepped forward and hugged my waist. She whispered, "James, have a safe journey." I nodded and said, "Looking forward to seeing you next time." Then, she let go of me and pushed me away capriciously, not allowing me to look back at her. After a year, I stood in front of the MO Medical Center again. It was as if I had returned to a few years ago when I first stood here, filled with longing for Sophia and reluctance to leave my hometown. Nothing had changed. My busy classmates, the randomly piled up snowmen, and the vast snow-covered plain stretching for several kilometers with no one in sight. It was snowing again. In this high-latitude foreign land, spring always seemed out of reach. But it was also here that I found my ideal. In the collision of human thoughts, I saw the light of science and the hope for the continuation of human civilization. I rubbed my frozen red cheeks. Before I could get closer, the door slowly slid open. A slender and cool-looking figure stood at the door. Her almond-shaped eyes were filled with a gentle smile. In an instant, spring seemed to be within reach again. Olivia stretched out her hand and smiled at me, saying, "James, welcome home."